It actually
Yeah,
took
but-
longer than the first expansion.
Really?
That's because the game will remember your choices, and based on your choices, things may happen in future games.
It was actually the mechanics wheel, because for a long time they didn't want to allow that to happen, but in the end it made the cut. So
Well, welcome on into all of our regulars. I hope you're having a lovely morning. I also see a lot of brand new faces in here. I wonder why. It's almost like we have a really cool game that we're going to be talking about today that's drawn a lot of new folks in. If you happen to be one of those new people, welcome to the Czech Games Edition Twitch channel. It's super nice to meet you. My name is Ray. I run this show. We actually stream every single week. We do weekly content in addition to these more formal streams, like I'm sure you all know today we're doing a Q&A. So in addition to these more formal type of shows like what we're doing today, we also just stream regular board game content here. I typically stream 3 days a week on this channel. We play CGE games, we play non-CGE games. So all that is to say that if you came here just for the Q&A, that's awesome. Super happy to have you here. But if you happen to have a really nice time in chat, you like me, you like my mods, you like vibing with us, please consider following the channel because we do produce weekly content on this channel. So if you like to watch board game stuff, this is the place to be. And if you're a CGE mega fan, we do a lot of like announcements on this channel. So if you want to be the first person to hear about upcoming CGE stuff, the Twitch channel is where all the secrets get leaked. It's where I leak stuff on a weekly basis and skirt the line of getting fired every week by accidentally talking about things I shouldn't. I'm very, very excited to jump into this Q&A, and I'm now going to switch over to a scene with our lovely guests. Welcome, Mín and Elwen, back to the stream. Thank you so much for joining me.
hello.
Hi.
So chat, please say hi to Mín and Elwen. These are the two designers of The Last Ruins of Arnak, and I am very, very honored that they have joined us again on stream. First off, Mín and Elwen, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for joining me, and second of all, congratulations on the second expansion for Last Ruins of Arnak being developed and coming to retail soon-ish. And speaking about this second expansion, we have yet another scene that we can jump to that has some of the components on screen. We have a disembodied Reggie behind the camera who will be showing off some of the components as we talk about them. But before we get into more specific questions about the expansion, let's talk a little bit about what the expansion is. So at its core, this expansion is going to be bringing 2 new leaders that you can play. You can bring into your regular game. You can mix and match with the first expansion's leaders. And it's introducing a solo/co-op story campaign mode, which is very, very cool. Let's start with the first of those 2 things. Could you give me just a brief overview of these 2 new leaders that we're going to be bringing to the world of Arnak?
You've probably seen it on a trailer. So we have 2 leaders. One of them is journalist. He is a very curious man. Yeah, Reggie, thank you so much.
Perfect, Reggie, you're doing a great job. Look at him.
So yes, so his desire is to really travel the Arnak as much as possible and to document it, everything that he will see there.
Mm-hmm.
So he will really focus on traveling to different sites and writing articles about them. So this is really his forte, and he will have his special like a mini game with newspapers where he will be writing in articles, adding it to these newspapers, getting different bonuses. So that is the first character, and then we see the newspapers.
You can see the articles that he collects in the middle.
By the way, everything is still work in progress. Just that you know, I know that everyone already mentioned that like 1,000 times, but this is not final copy yet. But yeah, we're getting there with our illustrators. Also, the second character is a mechanic. She is this amazing lady able to fix everything.
She's my favorite. I think she's so cool.
Yeah, so her, as you can notice, I think its biggest draw is this little mini game. It was profoundly tested by our kids, that it holds together and you can spin with it crazy fast. So yeah, you will be building this little machine on the side there. Your little helper monkey will be helping in the process. And yeah, so it's we may later talk more about the mechanics behind the mechanic. But that's a really cool character too.
It's so cool. I want to talk a little bit sort of about what was your inspiration behind these characters? Were these characters that maybe you always wanted in the first expansion, but they didn't quite fit? Were these Was there a specific character from maybe media that inspired, the idea of having this mechanic with her monkey? Where did the core conception for these two characters come from?
Well, actually, the core conception for the mechanic play was coming from the gameplay mechanics that we really liked, and the idea. Well, I really like the idea of making the cards that you have for the start of the game sort of upgrading during the gameplay. So this wheel you will be turning is basically a device that helps your starting cards have different effects and maybe grow in power during the gameplay.
That's awesome. I got the extreme pleasure of trying out both of these characters at our internal playtesting event in the Czech Republic recently, and I absolutely adore the mechanic. I love that wheel. I love things that are tactile, but that also serve a function. Yeah. It's so cool. You're adding different upgrades to your wheel and turning it, and it's fantastic. Was there any sort of specific inspiration for the journalist? I feel like I've seen the journalist sort of in development for a long time. I think I've seen his ideas sort of grow and change, I only get to go to the Czech Republic a couple times a year, but I feel like I've seen him in different iterations over the years. Where did his inspiration come from, the idea of having a journalist?
Ever since the start, the main idea behind him, I think, was using the travel symbols in interesting ways.
Definitely.
And, make the best of them. Because sometimes you get a card that gives you more travel symbols than you can use. This character that's his strong side, that he can use them well.
Yeah. Because one thing we really like about the leaders, if they can do this, is that kind of if they bring different value to different cards. Let's say you're playing as a captain from the first expansion, and so you have 3 archaeologists, and there are some cards that are super powerful for you because they award you based on the number of archaeologists you have on the map, and suddenly this card is so great for you. And something similar we wanted to do with that's the so something like that we wanted to do with this character as well, and throughout our testing this worked really great. Suddenly you are appreciating some of the cards much more than before because you are focusing on their travel value more than on their effect. And it's really interesting with some cards how they come alive for him.
Perfect. And Reggie's showing off the little newspaper slots that, I don't know, Reggie, if you can show the board again and how those slot in. Yeah, so what Reggie's holding there are little, sort of, I don't know what you'd call them, little tokens that you slot into the journalist board, and that changes, the abilities that his newspaper tokens can have. We've touched on it a little bit, but you'll see, Reggie's got these little shards of newspaper scattered all across the board. That is what the journalist is going out and trying to find, and he does that by using travel icons in a unique and different way. He uses those icons to get these stories from all around Arnak, and then he places them on his board, and as he places them on his board, he gets special one-time powers or extra bonuses and stuff. And what I love is that the bonuses that he gets can change. You can swap out those tokens to get to play with different benefits, which is really, really cool. I feel like that isn't even something we needed to do. I feel like you could have just had the same base and it would be cool, but I love that we went that extra mile to give that variety and variability to his character. Yeah, the pieces are seated on the board. Yeah, it's really nice, Jeremiah.
We ourselves will play it a lot, so we wanted to have fun all the time.
That's awesome. And then maybe let's talk a little bit more about the mechanics of the mechanic. I'm sure that joke's going to get very old for the two of you very quickly. But just to give a little bit more context for what we're talking about, you start off with this wheel on your board that has 4 little silver nubs to your gear. And throughout the game, you're going to be collecting these little golden nubs that have slightly better bonuses on them. And you've got various mechanics throughout the game that allow you to spin this wheel, and wherever the wheel lands, that dictates what bonuses you can get. And there are certain wheel turns that only allow you to get the silver bonuses. And some that allow you to get the gold bonuses. So it's a matter of upgrading your wheel, but also timing, which I love so much. You have to time when you spin this wheel, how much you spin it in order to make sure that you are getting the right bonuses when you need them. Because I found when I played this game, the wheel turn ability is, I wouldn't say rare, but you're not turning it constantly all the time. You have to really sort of plan ahead and think. And I just absolutely adore that. And I just wanted to kind of go over that for chat. If you have any other specific mechanic questions, chat, feel free to pop them in chat. But that's sort of the basics of how those two characters work. Now talking a little bit about other things in this expansion, Barney wants to know how many new cards, so artifacts and object cards, are there in this new expansion? If you happen to know that number off the top of your head, not to put you on the spot.
Well, this is tough one because we're still in the process. Sometimes we know, like this is 100%, there will be 110 cards in this expansion. There will be a ton of new cards.
But not all of them will be items or artifacts.
Exactly.
Many of them will be story cards.
And now we are in this phase, it's like we want even more cards, but we need to decide what we will prioritize. So we can't say for sure how many items and artifacts will make the final testing phase and how we will put it all together. But I think there will be more than in the first expansion. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it will be a good amount.
Perfect.
Many cards in testing, some will not make the cut, so.
And I definitely want to talk about those story cards, but before I miss it, Kama asks, is that a third assistant spot on the mechanics board? Maybe Reggie could pull that back out again. We can talk about why is there a third spot for an assistant on the mechanics board?
Well, it's because she will have a monkey helper.
He's so cute. He's so cute. I love him so much. Look at him. He's so helpful. So that symbol that you see on the monkey card, that is the ability that allows you to turn the wheel. So the mechanic will always get the monkey. I don't know if it's changed since I've played it, but at a certain point during the game, she will acquire the monkey who will hang out with her, and then she still gets to have two regular assistants just like any other leader. She's super cute. I love that. Yeah, there you go. You'll acquire the monkey in the second round, and you'll also be able to get those little gold nubs for your gear at various points during the game as well. Are these characters balanced for multiplayer games? Because they say that they look like they're really great for solo gameplay. What's your thoughts on these leaders being mixed in with the base game and with the Expedition Leaders expansion?
Mm-hmm. They should be balanced with the Expedition Leaders. And it's like actually not meant to be played with one player playing with a leader and one without a leader, right? So you can either play all players with a leader or all players without a leader, but they should be balanced with the first expansion.
We will actually, we are already running and we'll continue running quite extensive testing. Basically we are testing all the leaders from the first and the second expansion together to really get them on the same level.
Perfect.
And so that's one thing. This is still in development. I guess most of the players will either play with all leaders or without. Just in case someone would like to play with leaders and they have just the second expansion, so they would have just two leaders, we might include a variant how to kind of like tweak rules a little bit so we can play some players with the leader and with the basic deck. But again, this is just part of the testing that we run.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another question from Pampo, who wants to know, where do these new characters rank in terms of difficulty compared to the leaders from the first expansion?
I would say they're a little bit more complicated than some of the first leaders that we had in the first expansion. So I would still think that Captain and Falconer, like these characters, are quite straightforward. So they are better for the starting players. Those are the leaders from the first expansion.
It also depends on like the way you think, because some players reported that the journalist is really complicated for them, and some said he was really easy. And
like
it all depends on how you think, because if you are trying to plan everything first round for the entire game, then it may be really complicated to play him because he has lots of options.
Right.
To think each path.
It's very thinky. Yeah, it's a little,
And that I don't think he is that complicated if you just wing it a little.
I think maybe a good example would be in Arnak, you have these idols that you can slot, and they would give different options. And well, some players would always try to consider all the options in all the moments. And for them, Arnak feels like, wow, this is such a brain-burning game because I need to always think about this one token as 6 different options. But most other players, or I don't know if most, but a lot of other players, they usually play their game, and when they kind of like feel I need a resource in this moment, I will just consider this token.
Right.
So this could be the difference between just play styles.
Definitely. That's a great point. We have sort of a segue question. Twitcher Do, which I love your username, wants to know, will the solo and 2-player co-op campaign only be playable with these 2 new characters, or can you take characters from the first expansion and use them in the solo and co-op campaign?
Yeah, that should be actually playable with any leader you choose.
And that's how we are testing it. So yeah, we definitely want this expansion to be playable and this campaign to be playable with any leader you choose.
Yeah,
perfect.
Definitely.
And now let's talk a little bit about that solo and co-op campaign. Can you give us sort of a brief overview of what players can expect from that experience?
Well, I don't know where to start.
Let's start with, a lot of people want to know, how is it different from the print and play? So people kind of know a little bit of like what a campaign for Arnak looks like. How is this, the campaign that comes in this expansion, different from what folks have already seen from the print and play?
Mm-hmm. Well, if you compare the print and play, then we have well, let me answer it in this way.
Sure.
With the print and play, we only could use the things that are already in the box. So it was very limited. We couldn't really bring many new cards in and many rewards.
Mm-hmm.
This version, we now took the print and play version and we could upgrade it, and now you can actually unlock new cards, or like, it's not really unlocking, but you gain access to new cards as you play through the campaign as a reward, and the stories on the cards now can give you more options.
Yeah.
Because you can choose one of those options. And in the original campaign, we only replaced some bonuses you're already getting in the game.
Right.
Now you choose from two things.
Mm-hmm.
And also, additionally, they now have a lasting effect, which is couldn't do in the first expansion or the print and play expansion.
Yeah.
And the lasting effect kind of expands on the storytelling aspect of the game and maybe tells you a little bit more about Arnak and gives you some bonuses for a long-term use, not just for the one chapter.
Yeah.
So that's a few of the differences we have introduced.
Yeah, Reggie's showing off some of those story cards, and you can see that your options are split into two sides you can pick from, and that, as Min said, will have lasting effects on your game. To give us a little bit of like context for maybe folks who've never played the print and play, they've only ever played maybe base game Arnak. Can you describe sort of the opening scenario of the Arnak campaign to give people an idea of what to expect?
So basically, the campaign itself is like playing through a story where you follow in the footsteps of a missing expedition, as the title suggests.
Yeah.
And the chapters, like the first chapter tells you the beginning of the story. So there you're looking, kind of land on the island, and you're looking for the missing expedition. And you have different goals to achieve. Then some of them are like mandatory, and if you don't achieve those, then you did not like pass and you cannot continue in the campaign. And some of them are like just achievements, something that you can gain, and maybe it will help you unlock something or like gain something extra, a reward that you wouldn't be able to gain otherwise. And they should be challenging. So basically the concept is, if you are not that experienced and maybe do not trust your abilities that much, you don't have to strive for those achievements. But if you are like Arnak pro player, then you can try to complete all of those.
Awesome. Something I want to know, because I've actually stayed away from this campaign. I had the option to play it when I went to our playtesting event, but I'm holding out hope that maybe I can play it on stream, and I don't want to be spoiled. So I have lots of questions about the campaign because it's still pretty fresh for me as well, like it might be for many of our viewers. What are some differences in the playing experience from playing solo versus playing co-op? Is it like just the same experience but just with two people? Is there some fresh mechanic that you introduce when you play a co-op versus playing it solo?
Well, for one thing, the co-op is a little bit more challenging. Like the goals are counting on you being.
I remember Tony and Nathan were playing it when we were at the PlayStation event, screaming at each other because apparently Tony and Nathan approached it very differently, and I heard about that all day. That they like couldn't communicate.
Do any achievements, we'll just survive.
Yeah, that was Nathan like wanted to experience the game, and Tony was like, "We're out in the jungle, we gotta survive," like just brute forcing it. And Nathan was trying to like have some nuance to their strategy. It was hilarious, and that's part of why I wanted to ask, like, what's that dynamic like with the 2-person co-op versus just playing it solo?
But it's true that there are a few mechanics like the difference is not that huge, but you will be able to share some resources. There's mechanics with that you can send a carrier pigeon with some resources that your mate needs. So that's actually something that you discuss how to divide your resources, how to. And since there are more goals and achievements, sometimes you kind of like also discuss, okay, so you will do this and I will do that. And you kind of like need to cover ground
You
because
sort of can specialize a little bit.
Oh, I like
because
that.
scenario kind of like there are different goals and objectives, and you will realize that you need to play the Arnak differently in each chapter. It's if you already know kind of like your pattern, okay, first I do this, then I get my assistant, and then I build a deck, then I will go for. So that will not work always.
Yeah, it can sort of teach you to play Arnak differently, so you can achieve all the goals. And I think there are more things that kind of support the cooperation in the game as well, because some of the story cards you will be revealing will like give you an option to keep the card and use it later. And if you use that option, then any player can actually gain the benefit of the card.
Yeah, you are keeping it
like
for team.
Share it or keep it for the team, and then anybody can kind of use its benefit. And there was another thing, and I forgot what it was. Oh, right. When you gain any cards during the game, fulfilling the achievements, then you can choose which player actually gains the card to their deck. So it's kind of like also, like, for example, I can kind of contribute to I don't know, gaining the card, but then the player can actually gain the card, so I can help him out.
Very cool.
You see that you just showed cards like Arnak Cola. Sometimes we made fun. will not make it to the final cut, I think. But
Arnak Cola's not making it to the final cut?
I don't know yet, but
oh, that's so cute though. I love it. Sad. And just to answer, this is a question I can actually just answer quickly. Lockstone the Fighter wants to know, can you play the campaign only solo and with 2 players? As far as I know, yes. There's no options for higher player counts. That's the extent of it. Let's see.
The story behind it is we started with a solo experience, and for the longest time we thought we will just publish it as a solo experience. But then as we started to playing it and testing it, we wanted to play together, and we tried to find a way how to actually redesign it, and it was a big part of it. We thought this will be easy, kind of like just a module that we will just basically present. This is the printer play, but we just printed it for you professionally, and you will have a nice campaign.
It's our problem. We keep adding stuff and adding stuff.
It's a good thing, though.
So suddenly, this was supposed to be a really small project, and I think we worked on it. It was.
Well, the printer play itself took a lot of time, and then the last year and a half now we kept working on this constantly. So
it actually took longer than the first expansion.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
It's more complicated to put all of that together.
Well, it's also 2 very different things, right? At least in the first expansion, you were just working on coming up with leaders, and now it's leaders and this whole new form of gameplay.
We learned a lot during the process. That's for sure, and it's interesting. But I think, as I said, our problem is we keep adding stuff because we think it will be better this way. So, for example, the new temple track was not supposed to be inside originally, but then
Reggie, you want to hold that up? I don't know if you've got stuff on it. If you're able to hold it up, that's asking too much. Look at that. So that's our new research track. How many research tracks come in the expansion? Is this one just double-sided?
Exactly, double-sided tattoo.
And again, this is a work in progress.
Yes, of course. I should have had a button that I can click that like flashes, like not final art, because I know someone on BGG is gonna run with it. But
yeah, as Mín said, like, you know, with the print and play, like, when we did the first just the print and play campaign that was only solo, it was really a MacGyver type of experience. So we just sit there with our base box. It's like, okay, this is everything we have, and we want to create a story around with these components. And it really felt like Apollo 13 kind of situations. Like, how can we fix this? How can we make it happen with just these tools?
Yeah.
And suddenly we have this opportunity. We can print anything. We can do so much more. Yeah, so here we are a year and a half later, finally getting it all together.
Oh my goodness. That actually brings up a fun question. One of my favorite things about working for CG is we have such an extensive like prototyping crew of people who can just churn out every wacky weird idea that a designer can have. We will have it in prototype form like the next week. What's some idea or functionality that you wanted to, if there is one, something you wanted to do, but the prototype people were like, no, this is too complicated. This, like, there's no way to make this work. Was there some physical component or something that unfortunately couldn't happen just because of the limitations of cardboard?
Well, actually, for the longest time, but it wasn't the prototyping people, but it was the production people.
Ooh, the prototyping people's angry older brother, yeah.
And it was actually the mechanics wheel, because for the longest time they didn't want to allow that to happen, but in the end it made the cut. So it was because of the pin, you know. So we didn't know if we can afford that.
Yeah,
well,
that's
complications with that. It's like it's not as easy, and anytime we mention anything with magnets, that sounds like.
Yeah, that's one of my. I was talking to Reggie about that before the stream. One of my favorite things about working in board games is you learn all these weird little bits of knowledge that you, as a hobbyist, just would never know. And yeah, Reggie was talking about how that one little plastic pin was like gonna push it over the edge price-wise. And like, as just a regular player, it's like, what? It's just a little piece of plastic. But when you get into all the production elements, one small little plastic button can really change the production view, like timeline and price of a whole game, which is crazy. But also I find it, like, I nerd out over that kind of thing. I think it's so cool. I'm glad it made it into the cut though, because that wheel feels so satisfying. I mean, that mechanic couldn't have existed without it. So I'm glad it made it into the cut. Oh no, now chat wants magnets. Oh no. Now they're all excited about the concept of magnets.
Of any kind, it seems problematic for some reason. And
one question that I have that I want to ask, for people who aren't as focused on co-op and solo games, because anyone who watches a lot of this channel knows I'm not a big co-op person, is there a way for those people to reuse some of the materials from the campaign in the regular game? Like, if you don't plan to play the campaign, can you reuse maybe some of the story cards or something in regular gameplay if you don't plan on doing the full campaign?
Yeah, we tried to make that possible.
Cool.
So basically, I don't know how much we can say, but
I think we can say.
Okay.
We should say something.
Okay, right. Well, we tried to make an easy way to introduce the story cards into usual play. So basically, you will have two sites, or how do we call them?
Yeah, sites.
Site tiles, where you can, as part of the effect, draw a card and resolve it. That's it.
And it actually gave us nice design space, because usually, you know, like when you visit a site or when you discover a site, you need some effects that are working for you immediately. And now with these cards, you can gain some really cool benefit that you can postpone for later. There could be something really unusual that such an effect wouldn't work on a normal site.
Yeah.
So these sites are kind of cool. The twist is, like, these sites you will not be able to use in a normal campaign. This is game. This is kind of like the module, how you connect it all together. It's
cool.
probably part of us that's kind of like this MacGyver's kind of like, we try to take the campaign and see, okay, how can we use all this in just the normal multiplayer game? So not everything is possible to use, but most of the content,
most of it, yes,
you can use it just when you're playing 3 or 4 players against each other. It's fine.
Very cool. That's awesome. That's very, very good to hear. So what was, just in general, what was the most challenging part of developing this expansion for you?
For me, I think, and I don't know, this is this was the most challenging, but maybe not like in a negative sense. We already finalized the game design once, like 4 months ago. We were kind of like, we were finished, and then we looked at it and said, this could be even better.
Really?
But that would mean we really did redesign. Like
That's right,
the story cards are completely redesigned when they were quite all developed.
Yes.
Not all of them were written, not all the effects were
Well,
there.
basically, we were adding a layer to the story and
Yeah.
all those like decisions. So, well, at one point we look at the game and we're like, maybe there's something missing that we really need to add, but we were sort of reluctant to do so because it meant we knew it would mean a lot of work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that decision to make, basically, to kind of say, okay, now we're almost finished, and now we start work anew. So, yeah.
Awesome.
It's a good one. I don't regret it, and like what it allows players to experience is you already seen Reggie showing you all these story cards.
Yeah.
We don't even know if we will call them story cards. We need to consult this with our rule
Yeah.
book, right? Some of the terms throwing around may totally change when
Sure,
they are
absolutely.
But when you have these choices, usually, and in the first print and play campaign, it worked the same way. You are just looking on the two effects, and that's what you're considering. But
Right.
with the new system, there are these little icons in the corners. You don't need to pay attention to them, but in a way, the game will remember your choices. And based on your choices, things may happen in future games.
I love that so much.
We're missing in the original the campaign, and now we like it. So again, like this sheet, it looks like a crazy Excel sheet. It will look totally different, but it captures some of the aspects that you kind of like carry these symbols, and when you meet certain points, because I don't know, you were too greedy or you were a guardian certain way, something will happen and it will have impact on the future chapters.
I love that so much. That's so cool. I love anything that is kind of feels like a living, breathing story, and that your actions in the game carry on to future events. I think that's so cool. And then several people have asked, is this the last expansion for Arnak?
It's the last expansion for this year for us, I think.
Okay. Cool.
We'll see. As I think Mín mentioned, there are so many interesting ideas worth exploring, but we will only do it if we feel it's making the game better. Because sometimes we feel like if there are too many, you can kind of make the game worse, and we don't want that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Definitely. There's definitely knowing your limit, or not your limit, like knowing when to stop, is hard, especially when you do have all those ideas. But I really value and appreciate that at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the experience is as good as it can be. And sometimes less is more at a point. So that's really good to hear.
We wanted to encounter, even while working on the first expansion, was like one of the big things was we want players to be able to just take it out of the box and play.
Yeah.
Not having to like go through so many rules. So you can actually, when you play with the leaders, you can just read the one leader you're playing and then just play.
That's my favorite thing about the first expansion. I love that so much. That's one of my pet peeves is when I get it. I often don't get expansions because I'm like, oh, well, I love the game as it is, and I don't want to have to learn all these new rules. And if I play it with a new person, I have to forget those new rules. But if I'm playing it, with experienced people, when we're playing with the expansion, it can be hard to shift gears. What I love about the Arnak expansion is it fits so seamlessly into the base game. All you really do need to do is open up the rulebook for the one leader you're playing, and that's all you need to know. It's super easy to take off the shelf, and also super easy to introduce to new people too, which is one of my favorite things. Like, you can teach someone Arnak for the first time and give them the captain, and I can play the mystic, and it works fine. It's not like, oh, well, here's all these extra special rules just for the expansion.
Well, hopefully we achieve this here as well, because if you're not playing the campaign, you can do the same trick as with the first expansion. You can just take the items, artifacts, the guardian side, you can just shuffle it in, you have new content, and you're ready to go. You have 2 new leaders, new temples. If you want to play with the campaign, then with each chapter, you need to read the rule set for that chapter. So that's different.
Right. Mín and Elwen, any other things besides the monkey naming competition that we should mention before I let you two go?
No, I think this was an amazing experience. Thank you so much for all the interest in the game. This is really a dream come true. Even just being able to talk about our designs and introducing the world we are creating, it's amazing.